Hello and welcome to my channel. I am the titular Witch King and oh, hold on one second. I don't have my camera on. Technical difficulties. Hold on one moment. Or hold on. Actually, I don't know if I can even do that. Edit. Um, well, regardless, camera or no, here's what I have to say. I am going to be reviewing one of the various games, and this one I have luckily played. It is the role-playing game called Arrows of Indra by RPG Pundit, published by Bedrock Games, and a quick note about this setting is that uh, it is based on Vedic mythology, Vedic India, which was approximately, best as far as I can understand and recall, about a little over 2,000 years ago, 2,000 plus years ago. Vedic India was a culture in the Indian subcontinent for a couple centuries at least, and the various gods and tales and heroes of the Mahabharata was actually uh, written, I believe, during the Vedic period, but a lot of the various deities within Hindu religion did not exist then. And so this role-playing game in particular deals with the Vedic period of India, which is more fantastical than Vedic India really was. However, there's a quick note on religion, and the book mentions that it should in no way be interpreted as making authoritative or accurate statements or descriptions on either classical Vedic religion or the modern religion of Hinduism, that is, its distant descendant. Nor does it advocate any caste system or social ranking in any way, and acknowledges the equality of all regardless of circumstance. So get that out of the way right now, and I'll get further into the game with my next topic. Within the world of Vedic India and Indian culture, at least in this time period, and in the mythology surrounding it, there is the concept of a third gender. Now, this is similar in some ways to the modern interpretation of transgenderism. Um, However, in the standard default setting, the third gender is basically any man who does not fit in with the traditional masculine schema and therefore takes on the female traits. And with this game, there is in fact a cover that depicts a Kleba or third gender Siddhi, which were the magicians. Um, I wish I could show it to you, but I guess I can't do that on this stream. Uh, the whole idea of the setting is that you're adventuring in the time of the Mahabharata, which is approximately 40 or so years of time. Um, and when you make a character, you have the option of playing several castes. And I should mention that one of the casts that you can play as a human anyways, is what we would term the Untouchables or the Dalits caste. Um, Honestly though, I don't think they work very well for gaming. Um, they can be useful, but they really don't fit in with the whole adventuring kind of schema of the setting, which is sad, but that's sadly how culture in India is, and to some degrees is today. Um, then you have the Sudra, which are the slaves, serfs, and servants of the society. They're not untouchables, they're respected, and then you have the Vaishya, which are the largest caste and are kind of equivalent to the middle class within Western society and culture. And then you have the Kshatriya caste, which are the warriors and rulers. And they are second in hierarchy after the Brahmins. And then you have the Brahmin caste, which are the caste of priests and philosophers and rulers. Um, One of the important things about this game is that due to how Vedic India and the stories of the Mahabharata were written and told, family is very important to to the game. So when you make a character, after you roll or choose your caste or choose to play a barbarian or non-human race, um, you roll a d6 or like you roll some dice and you try to ascertain the circumstances of birth of your character, how many siblings you have, how many surviving siblings you have, the gender of each surviving child, and if you are the oldest surviving male child, you are either the heir, if your father is still alive, or the head of the family if the father is deceased. Um, then you have the barbaric and non-human races. Now, this is something that some people have gotten upset about, and I can kind of see their point, but I disagree with them hard, most uh, very much so. Um, One of the barbarian races that you can play as or encounter in the setting are the Beals, which are barbarian humans who the prejudiced civilized people in the Bharata kingdoms believe to be a non-human race or a race that is partly demonic. They live in the southern hills and jungles and in other peripheral areas of the Bharata culture, and they're known to be fierce warriors. The racial bonuses and penalties they get are kind of equivalent to half orcs. Um, then you have the Gandharvas, which are the crossing of human and divine nature spirits. And they appear as tall, thin, light-skinned, beautiful humans with feathers on the top of their head instead of hair. And they live eternal lives, practically immortal. And they often live in the mountains high up. Um, and their culture is very alien to normal human Bharata culture. Um, they're basically the elves of D&D. Then you have the Rakshasas, which are humans who are crossbred with Asura demons. They are unholy, but not all members of the race are malevolent. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch upon is the fact that within the world of the Bharata kingdoms, um, there is the concept of morality. And within this setting, there are only really two options. You have the holy people and the unholy people. And holy adventurers can be just as much bastards as the unholy heroes and adventurers, because the unholy characters can be just as kind or nasty as as any person in general. And so I just thought I'd mention that as an aside, because even though the Rakshasas are considered unholy, it does not mean that they are evil in Western culture. Um, they are pretty cool. They can see in the dark. They get a +1 bonus to all saving throws versus magical items or spells. They get a +1 bonus to hit with all bladed melee weapons. And they get a +1 bonus to unarmed damage due to their claw-like fingernails or fang-like teeth. Then you have the Venaras, which are monkey people. So you can play basically the descendants of Hanuman, who was a character and a god within the Ramayana. He was a friend and helper of Rama. Um, and then you have the Yakshas, which are mountain spirits, and they're essentially dwarves. The Venaras are basically halflings. The Gandharvas are essentially um, elves. The Beals, half orcs. The Rakshasas, I don't know what they would really be. I mean, they're certainly not tieflings in D&D 5th edition or 4th edition. But I guess that's kind of the closest thing you could get in comparison, just demonic humanoids, but still mortal and still human-esque. Further, there is in character creation a whole list of male and female names, which you roll a percentile roll in order to determine your character's name. Levels in this game go from 1 to 13 plus, and the classes you can play as are priests, fighters, Virakakshatriyas, which are essentially paladins, scouts, which are essentially rangers, Siddhis, which are magicians, but they don't have any spells like in D&D. Um, Honestly, a lot of the magic that the Siddhis have is taken whole cloth out of Empire of the Petal Throne. But I don't see that as a bad thing necessarily, and it's certainly not illegal within role-playing games. Further, you have thieves and thuggies, which don't really fit in with the historical setting, but are cool nonetheless. So you get to basically play holy assassins, and my god, that's one of the coolest things in this game, honestly. Thuggies are so cool. Um, then you have yogis, which are essentially monks, and they require some really fucking high stats in order to even become a yogi. Um, and though they start with lower hit points than most classes, they never stop rolling for hit points ever. Then you have your skills, and some of you as I've mentioned before in my Invisible College review, would not be a fan of skills in OSR games. However, I think these work, especially for the kind of rule system that Pundit has written. You have lower caste background skills, middle caste, and upper caste background skills. And each class has their own skills. So priests can gain some skills like theology, demonology, the ability to speak different languages, stuff like that, as well as some more magical abilities. Priests at advanced skills, they can have the Arcana of the Opened Mind, which is a ritual that takes 20 minutes to perform and allows the priest to sense the thoughts of all the beings within 20 feet of his person. So there's some clauses to that, but yes, you can basically do telepathy. Um, then there's Arcana of the Voice in the Silence, which allows you to communicate with people by speaking a message of pure thought with another individual. And that can be sent to anyone up to 18 miles away. So, pretty cool. Then you have fighter skills, and one of the things that's very interesting, in my opinion, about uh, Vedic and Hindu culture, at least their mythologies, certainly not today, anyways. I don't know. I've never been to India. I don't really know any Indian people. But the whole thing about Vedic and the Vedic mythology and the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, such like that, is that bows and arrows, those are the most honored weapons within the setting. So, swords, not nearly as honored as bows. So, whereas King Arthur was all about Excalibur, and Roland had his sword. I forget the name of that sword, Caliburn, something like that. I forget. Um, the Indian subcontinent was focused heavily on bows and arrows. So some of the most amazing uh, magic weapons in this game are bows and arrows, and there's celestial arrows and celestial weapons. And my god, are they awesome. Like, there's one of them that, if I recall correctly, it allows you to basically launch an arrow that would cause the equivalent of a nuclear explosion. So just sit on that for a second, because this game can be really fucking high powered, and that's one of the cool things about it. CD adventurers can uh, learn to freeze their body in place, not moving a muscle, um, or hold their breath for extremely long periods of times to a theoretical limit of a single breath per day. They also can learn demonology, illusionary kind of stuff, uh, remote viewing, astrology, making objects float and move through the air around them. So brings to mind the Jedi in Star Wars, which is pretty cool. Um, but yeah, the Thuggy, they gain the same skills as thieves. Um, then you have enlightenment powers. Excuse me. Priests and CDs gain them, and you have a certain percentage chance per rank per level. So I don't believe you start out with any enlightenment powers, but yeah, they have all kinds of neat powers that you can use. Um, Currency is in rupias, um, dam, which are copper coins, annas, which are silver coins, and rupias, which are gold. Um, but it's basically the same as D&D. Um, One of the things that probably would offend many people nowadays is the fact that in this game you can buy slaves, and um, though there are strict social laws regarding slavery in this setting, um, regardless, you can still purchase and own slaves. And I do not agree with that at all in the modern setting, or not modern setting, but in modern life. That is abominable to me. But in a fictional fantasy setting, especially in a historical one, I see no issue with that. Um, this game has something that is very important to me, especially when it comes to OSR games, which is sorely lacking from 5th edition D&D, and that is the reaction roll and the morale rules. Um, reaction rolls are very good because they basically determine the social behavior of an NPC in an initial encounter. And so you can it's just a reaction roll. It's pretty cool. And then you have morale rules, which are very important to in my mind because one of the issues within 5th edition is that you can just keep throwing monsters at your players. And unless you've played old school D&D or an OSR game, you're not going to think, oh, maybe these orcs would run away if they see too much violence or show of force or intimidation by the adventurers, which is something that can very much happen within Arrows of Indra. Um, then you have the setting overall. Tradition is very important within the Barata kingdoms. Um, there are several kingdoms scattered throughout the map. I believe the map for this game was created by Robert S. Conley, or Rob Conley, if you prefer. Um, you have the Western lands, which have the Balika kingdoms, the Madra kingdoms, um, and the map is just so beautiful and evocative of the old school D&D type maps, which I really enjoy. Um, funnily enough, it is the uh, uh, Western. Um, no, is it the Eastern or the Western? I'm trying to remember. Uh, yeah, it's the Eastern um, part of the map that is considered the most civilized. And the further west and south you go, the more barbaric people are. Um, there's a whole section on the cultural background, which I think is very important to playing the game. And then finally, you have the Batala Underworld, which is essentially a massive mega dungeon, which is where the various divine beings exist. And it's between the surface world and the hell realm lies the Batala underworld. Um, and if you're at all knowledgeable about Indian mythology, you would probably understand that the Batala underworld is not accurate to how the Batala is actually mentioned in the text. But for the purpose of a fantasy adventure game, I think it works really well. Um, and each of the various realms are governed or populated by various types of monsters, and um, you have cavern complex size tables, exits, cave lighting, random cave contents, magic springs, um, and one of them is a fountain of youth, which is just so cool to me. I'm a huge fan of immortality in role-playing games and fiction, but that might become clear with some of the other role-playing games I review. So yeah, just lots of random tables, random monster tables for the Patala underworld, um, encounters along the road because there are caravanserais throughout the roads between villages, farms, and manor holdings. And one of the, as I understand it, prime inspirations for this game was to make Empire of the Petal Throne into a more coherent and less esoteric game setting, which, for all I love of Tecumel and Empire of the Petal Throne and Baythorm and so on and so forth, I have to recognize that, and I do, that it's a very esoteric game and you're not going to find many, if any, players in most places. And you really have to buy into the setting, which is something most people can't do with how alien and exotic it is. Finally, you have the gods and religions, and in order to have a god intervene on your behalf, um, you have to go on a divine quest until there's a table that you roll percentile on in order to figure out what the quest is. And it ranges from hunting down 1d6 specific and powerful unholy individuals and slaying them, to being pointed in the general direction of a hidden Asura temple or the desecrated ruins of the deity's own temple and clear it from all evil. Constructing a shrine to the deity, all kinds of things. And there's the division between the old gods, the river goddesses, the Vaishnavites family, the Shaivites family, and I apologize for butchering all of these words. I'm only doing as best as an approximation I can, and I'm sure I'm butchering it to hell and back. Then you have Krishna, who's the current Avatara, and you can potentially run into him, but he will definitely be a character within the overall campaign should you run one. It discusses religious rituals, and finally for the third time, of course, I forgive me, I need to write a better script next time. You have the higher level play appendix, which details housing, profit from lands that you can gain, um, mercenary work, temple priesthoods, joining, basically the kinds of things that characters would do once they get to high enough level and they're not sent out adventuring all the time anymore. You can also become a business person. So you could become a slave trader, which, I mean, you could if you wanted. You could become a merchant to sell spices or all kinds of things. And so you can send your character or his allies that he's gained on merchant ventures and sending the merchants along the routes. Um, then there is taxation and taxes and royal attention, marriage, children, and inheritance, because this game can go on for quite a long time, at least a couple generations, and in that way it's similar to something like King Arthur Pendragon. There's also mention of laws and punishments, and then finally there is the future events in chronological order of the campaign and its setting. So yeah, all kinds of cool stuff going on. Many world-shaking events, wars between kingdoms, gods coming down to earth, um, curses and blessings, and all kinds of stuff. Um, I would give this game probably a 4 out of 5. The artwork, although primitive, is meant to be evocative of the old school AD&D artwork, and so I forgive it for that. Because honestly, I like AD&D artwork, even if it is kind of silly and grotesque in how it. I don't mean grotesque in a bad way, but just kind of grotesque in the sense of how dirty and quick the drawings seem to be. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope it was informative. And if you enjoy this kind of stuff, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. It is very helpful, and hopefully I can gain enough subscribers that I can start streaming from my audio, or from my phone. And that would be very kind of you to do, because once I get to 50 subscribers, I can start doing that, and then I can start showing you the books that I have. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I have a lot of books. Anyways, thank you for watching, and this is the Witch-King, signing off.